Chapter 37. The Riverside Hotel. Frau Eldrat sat at the dressing table of her room at the Riverside Hotel, brushing her hair. Bottles of scent and ointments, her silver combs, her powder puffs, were all spread out in front of her. Sunlight filtered in from her private veranda with its deck chairs and pots of hanging carnations. Oswald was in an adjoining room, gazing out at the paddle steamer and the colourful pleasure boats on the river through his binoculars. Mathilde had been difficult before they left for Vienna. "I don't see why you should use Oswald all the time to fetch and carry for you," she had said, glaring at her sister. "Oswald is my husband. He doesn't belong to you." "I never said he did. If it's of any interest to you, I find Oswald extremely dreary. He has no breadth, no vision," said Eltraut, "but I need him for this last journey to Vienna. Once we have Annika back at Spittal, I will find a person to be with her at all times, and see that there's no more nonsense. If necessary—" But this was a sentence she did not finish, since Mathilde was weak and dithery, and had been fond of Annika. "And I have to point out that you were pleased enough to come to Zurich and spend my money." "Your daughter's money, you mean?" Eltraut ignored this. "If the truth came out, you'd be in quite as much trouble as Oswald and myself." "No, I wouldn't. I didn't steal the trunk. And Gudrun knows nothing about it, nothing at all." "Well, of course not. Nor does Herman. One would hardly bring children to something in which secrecy is essential. But I tell you, if we don't get Annika away from Vienna, and quickly, and make sure she cannot escape again, everything we have worked for could fall to the ground." "Well, all right," said Mathilde sulkily, "but this is the last time, and I shall expect you to bring back a present for Gudrun. I suppose you won't go back to the Hotel Bristol?" "You know perfectly well that I can't go back to the Bristol," said Eltraut, who had left without paying her bill. "Well, in that case, why don't you stay near the river instead? There's a good hotel by the Danube, the Riverside. Oswald thinks we'll need a new boat for the lake, and there's a boat builder near there." "Oh, Oswald wants me to buy him a boat now, does he?" But she did, in fact, book 2 rooms at the Riverside Hotel on the edge of the city, and when she and Oswald arrived in Vienna, she was glad she had done so, because the weather was fine and warm, and the hotel, with its verandas over the water, and its riverside walks, and its view of the landing stage where the steamer unloaded its cargo of passengers, was a very pleasant place to be. "I have business to attend to in the morning, as I told you," Eltraut told her brother-in-law when they arrived. "I shan't need you for that. But in the afternoon I want you to come with me to fetch Annika. I have full legal rights as her mother, but I don't trust these professors." "You don't think they'll suspect something?" "Don't be silly. How could they? Zed's with the gypsies in Hungary, and no one else knows anything." So now she was busy creating herself in readiness for another day. Her morning dress of coral silk was protected by a chiffon peignoir. Her coral earrings and matching necklace were waiting on the jewelry stand. She had powdered her face and darkened her eyelashes. Her long hair, washed the night before by the hotel hairdresser, hung loose down her back, and she was brushing it. One could never brush hair hard enough, or for too long. She was interrupted by a knock at the door, and hotel page announced there was a young lady to see her. "Did she give her name?" "No, madam. She's very young. Just a child. Shall I send her up?" "Yes, you had better do that." Annika had been awake the whole night. The professor's accusations went round and round in her head, and every time she pushed them away, they came back again. The professors were lying. They had to be. They may not have meant to lie, but they'd lied just the same. It was not possible that her mother was a thief. If she was guilty, if she had not only stolen the trunk, but blamed Zed for the theft, and that was impossible. Annika remembered the joy of that first meal in the Hotel Bristol, the excitement and pride of finding that she belonged to such a beautiful woman, and the hope with which she had travelled to Spittal. Perhaps Uncle Oswald had done it. He was always doing things for her mother. Yes, it could be that. And her mother hadn't known till it was over. Oh God, she had to believe that her mother was good. How did people live if they thought their mother was dishonest? As soon as it was light, Annika had got dressed and crept out of the house. She had to see her mother at once, and she had to see her alone and find out the truth. Nothing mattered except that. The journey to the Riverside Hotel was long and wearisome. The tram to the terminus, and a little train which steamed along the Danube, and a dusty walk from the station to the hotel. But as she came up the front entrance, with its flowering trees and its awnings and verandas, her mood lifted. This was a place for summer and happiness, not for lies and intrigue. In 10 minutes, in 5, the nightmare would be over. Her mother would put her arms round her and tell her the truth, and the truth would set her free. "Come in," called Eldraut. She sprayed herself with scent once more, and shook out her hair, so it mantled her shoulders. Then, brush still in her hand, she rose quickly and went to the door. "Annika, my dearest child, my own darling! What is it? You look so pale." Annika had not come forward. She was still standing, very straight, her back against the door. "What has upset you so, my child? What have they been telling you to make you look like that?" "They told me it was you who stole Rodin's trunk," Annika said steadily. "You and Uncle Oswald, because the jewels in it were real." Her mother's hand went to her throat. "How dare they? How dare they tell you such dreadful lies? No wonder you look so upset." Zed came. He's in Vienna. He heard the story from Baron von Keppel and... Zed? Zed is in Vienna? Yes. For a moment there was complete silence. Annika had not moved from the door, nor had her eyes left her mother's face. When she spoke again, her voice was very low, but each word was absolutely clear. "Could you please tell me the truth?" said Annika. "Just the truth, Mamma. Nothing else." Eltraut had slipped off her pig noir. In her coral silk dress, her wonderful hair mantling her shoulders, she was dazzling. Her scent was different, not strange and exotic, but light and summery. Beautiful people always surprise one afresh, but Annika stood her ground. "Please, Mamma." Then something extraordinary happened. The tall, proud woman in her silken dress seemed suddenly to crumple. She took a few faltering steps, and then she dropped onto her knees in front of Annika. "You shall have the truth," she said brokenly. "Yes, I did it. I made Oswald fetch the trunk. It was addressed to me, remember? I took the jewels and took them to Switzerland. But before you call the police, would you try to understand? No, to forgive. That'd be asking too much, but understand. I shan't call the police, said Annika. Not ever. You're my mother. But I'd certainly like to understand. Of course, of course. Eltraut rose from her knees and fell back into a low chair. She stretched her hands out to her daughter, trying to conceal the relief she felt. Annika took them, but her eyes were still fixed steadily on Eltraut's face. If you could try to imagine, said Eltraut, I was only 20 when I was married, far too young to be a judge of character. And when I realized my husband was a compulsive gambler, I was very much afraid. There was no one to turn to, no one to help me. Week by week, month by month, I saw the house stripped of all its treasures, the paintings, the books, my own jewels and my sister's. Well, you know all about that. But remember, my darling, I was a von Tannenberg. We are a proud family. The shame of being beggars, of people turning their faces away when they met me, people I'd known all my life. Oh, it was dreadful. Then my husband fled to America, and I was quite alone at Spittal, with a young son to care for. I didn't know what to do. I saw Spittal becoming a ruin, and there have always been von Tannenbergs at Spittal. And then my father died, and I had an idea which lifted my spirits. No, more than that. It made me so wonderfully happy. Can you guess what it was? Annika shook her head. I would find my little daughter, the one I'd been forced to abandon when she was only a few days old. And suddenly, life seemed to have a meaning and a purpose once again. Eltraut had soaked a handkerchief. She crumpled it up into a ball and picked up another. But still, Annika did not speak. It was hard to find you. I went to Pettelsdorf, and there I learned you'd been adopted and taken to Vienna. And then I tramped the streets, trying to find out where you were. I found a lawyer, a famous man, Herr Prumpelmann Schlesinger, and he helped me. And then, at last, I found you. Oh, Annika, when you came in through the door of the professor's house, and I saw you there before me, with your father's eyes and hair, that look of trust, I think it was my first happy day for many years. Yes, I was happy too, said Annika quietly. But of course, I was worried about bringing you to Spittal. We were living, well, like peasants, no money at all. No, Annika wanted to say. Peasants don't live like that. They cook and clean and chop wood and make do. But she did not speak. Eltraut got up and walked to the window. But you see, Annika, the lawyer had found out something else about you. An old lady that lived on the square had left you a trunk full of keepsakes. The will was still being proved, and you knew nothing about it. Then, when I went back to Spittal to get ready for your arrival, my uncle told me the story about Larodin's jewels, and that they were real, but nobody knew it. Of course, I should have told you, but I didn't know if the story was true. The jewels might have been fakes, as everyone believed. I had this dream, Annika, the dream of making Spittal great again, and you and Herman living there in comfort. I have made a will, you know, leaving you a share of Spittal. Not just Herman, you. Oh, Annika, I've been so very foolish. I would have given you the jewels for Spittal. I would have given you everything I had, said Annika quietly. I know, oh, I know now, my darling. But remember, I hardly knew you then. I could see that you were sweet and pretty, but a little girl can have her head turned by sudden wealth. I should have trusted my own daughter, my own flesh and blood, but I had been hurt so much. Annika was very tired. Something seemed not to fit, but she was too wary to work it out. And Eldrad's eyes had filled with tears again. She put a hand on Annika's shoulder. We could start a new life together, you and I. We could make my dream for Spittal come true together. There's a lot of money left, and you shall decide how it is spent. Without Herman, I am so very much alone. Say it isn't too late. Say you'll come, my darling. I need you so very much. I won't go back to Grossenfluss. Not ever. In spite of her exhaustion, Annika's voice was firm. No, no, of course not. It was wrong of me to think that you might be happy there. I thought you needed companionship of your own age. But the school has changed completely in the last few years. I should have taken you there and seen for myself instead of letting you go with Mathilde. I've been guilty there too, dreadfully guilty. You'll never go back there, I swear it. She'd found another handkerchief and managed to smile through her tears. My poor, pale darling. Don't stand there by the door. Let the sun warm your face. Come out onto the balcony. Annika let herself be led out of the French window. In front of her was the dazzling water with its gaily painted boaters. Tulip trees were in flower along the bank. Children splashed in the shallows. The world was still there, and it was very beautiful. Look, there's the steamer, just going off to Regensburg. Annika nodded. It's the Princess Stephanie. Her mother put her arm round her, and her scent stole into Annika's nostrils. There's so much to see, so much to do. Couldn't we do it together? Still, Annika was silent. She did not think she'd ever been so tired. I've had such an idea, said Eltraut eagerly. We could go back home on the steamer. Go back by river. The boat goes quite a long way into Germany. We'd have days on the water before we had to change to a train. You'd like that, wouldn't you? You'd like travelling by boat. Yes. You'll come then, my darling? You'll forgive me? She stretched out her hands imploringly and looked deep into Annika's eyes. Because if I don't have your forgiveness, I don't know how I shall live.